Every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story. Some stories begin with questions, some begin with loss. All of them are rooted in love and the search for connection. This is Janet Monroe, and this is Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, a podcast where real stories take root and grow. Because the more we share, the more we understand, and understanding helps us grow. Now, here's Janet Monroe.
Hello, and welcome to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories.
Hi, Janet.
The roots represent the adoptee, the birth parents, and the adoptive parents, whereas the branches encompass the far-reaching effects of adoption, from the siblings to the grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and friends. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce you to an amazing woman who knew at a young age that adoption would play a major part in her future. Let me introduce you to Michelle. Michelle, welcome and thank you for being with us today. And please just tell your story of how Victoria became part of your life and the challenges and the joys that you faced.
Okay. Hi. So Tom and I, we got married like over 30 years ago. And when we first were planning our family, we talked about that we wanted to adopt someone who was possibly unadoptable, someone who maybe other people wouldn't want to adopt. And I guess I'd always wanted to adopt. I read a bunch of books that affected me, but a big one was when I was young, I watched the movie Annie. And so I had a romantic idea of adoption. But later on, I found out my mom wanted to adopt. So maybe that went inside of me and I didn't know. So when I was just 22 years old, I called the Children's Aid and put my name on a list for adoption. And my husband was 26. Tom, he was 26. So we put our name on the list for adoption, and we had to wait over a year to take the course. And later we found out that that was a really long wait, but it's because they thought that maybe we were too young or it was a romantic idea and we weren't really sure about what we were saying. So we ended up, it took us a year to take the course. Then once we took the course, it took us another year and a half to even come close to, getting the adoption approved. And later they told me it's because they thought we were too young and too naive. And we probably were. So in the meantime, when we were waiting to find our child, I started doing volunteer work with the Children's Aid. So I was doing foster relief, and I was doing supervised visits, and I was getting trained and doing all this kind of stuff and working with lots of different kids and different families and helping foster families who needed a break. And in that process, that's how we met Victoria. So Victoria was 4 years old. I was 26 by that time, by the time she moved in with us. So we met her, we did foster relief. The first day that we took her out, she was really mad that we didn't buy her toys at Toys R Us because we had gone there for a fun visit and only bought her one thing, and she peed in our car. So that was the very beginning, which was kind of funny. So she had a lot of stuff going on, and some of the stuff we knew about and some of the stuff nobody knew about. I was really lucky because I had been volunteering, so I knew a couple of the social workers there, and they, some of them tried to convince me not to adopt Victoria because she had a really, really tough life. And we got to read her file before we adopted her. So we couldn't say that we didn't know what we were going into. But back then, when we did that, so that was 27 years ago, the biggest thing that everyone was worried about were crack babies. or babies that were born addicted to drugs. And no one really talked about fetal alcohol syndrome. It wasn't a thing. Like, no one really knew about it. No one knew how much damage alcohol could do to a baby's brain. So when she was older, there was some people had said maybe she has fetal alcohol syndrome, but no one knew what that meant. And so it didn't seem like it was a big thing. So as we went through the parenting of adopting her, there was lots and lots of struggles with her. And a lot of people would look at all of her diagnosis and say that the fetal alcohol syndrome is the biggest thing, because so what happens when a mother drinks alcohol during pregnancy? And I'm not an expert on the diagnosis part of this, but I do know that it could be one mother never drinks and then went to a wedding before she knew she was pregnant, binge drank, and then her child can have fetal alcohol syndrome, and it can be severe. And another mother could drink all the time and it could be almost nothing. So it's not an exact science on how we do this, but we do know that what happens is that alcohol is a teratogen similar to thalidomide. Do you remember that? Thalidomide, where if a mother took thalidomide, the baby's arms would not grow because that cell died. So then anything that would have grown after that cell doesn't grow. Is the same thing alcohol does with the brain. Is that so there was literally holes in her brain that would never be able to grow. So how it really looks like in real life is like she has brain damage. It is the front lobe of her brain, which is really a big part of self-regulation and anger, and also changes personality. So a lot of people would say that fetal alcohol syndrome they say it's the umbrella. It is the biggest thing, that if a child has that is before everything else, before any other diagnosis, ADHD, anxiety, or anything like that. But I truly believe that the biggest thing that has affected her life is that because of the struggle she had as a baby and as a young child, she was moved 18 times from when she was 18 months to when she was 3. 18 months, 18 times, because she was moved back and forth, back home, back to foster care, back home, back to foster care, to different homes all the time, to failed adoptions, etc. The biggest thing that has affected her life and has affected who she is attachment reactive disorder. It means she didn't attach properly to someone, so she has trouble with trust. And that means she can never 100% trust me. She can never love me the same way that other kids love their moms, because of this attachment problem. And if I had known that was the most important thing, I think I would have changed everything on how I parented her. So now what I know as I'm going forward parenting or helping anybody else who's parenting, is I would say before anything else, before any discipline, before any bad behaviors, before everything, that attachment is the most important thing. And that if people are adopting kids, that the most important thing is to become attached. And it's really hard work to become attached. It's hard work for everyone. I think if people think about it as being hard work and I've got to focus on it and pay attention to it and think about it all the time as in the forefront, then it changes how we parent. And I think it's the most important thing for every parent. Like, no matter what, it's the most important thing for every parent. But when a parent adopts, right away there's attachment issues, and right away a child experiences trauma, even if that baby is adopted at birth, and even if it was planned from before that baby was born. There is trauma and attachment, and that is the hard part. That starting a family through adoption means starting the family on a block of trauma, on a block of pain. And it means that the very first block in building that, your family, is there. That's there, and it has to be part of the knowledge of adoption. But I've been really blessed. I have been really blessed to be able to learn all this and grow and become a different kind of parent than any kind of parenting that I was parented by. And my mom was an incredible parent. But everything has to be different when an adoption happens. So Victoria moved in when she was 4. And we parented her right through, working really hard to make her feel connected and loved and cared for until she was 11. Then we adopted 2 other kids, and I'll talk about that another time. And that was a real big trauma for Victoria because it brought up a lot of things for her. I'm going to shut my window. Sorry. So it brought up a lot of trauma for her, having more people come into the family, and it made her not sure that she was loved. And I think it wouldn't have mattered what happened. So that would have been her issue, and it might be her issue always her whole life to know if she's 100% truly loved. So Victoria has had a really tough life. She's really struggled. When she was 16, she was going through a really, really hard time. And right before she turned 16, for safety, mostly safety for her, we had to put her back into foster care. And she was in foster care for 2 years. We stayed connected. She kept coming to visit. We kept working with her. And we have stayed connected and supported her as best we can now. I think that was a really, really hard and painful thing for her. And I'm not sure if there had been different kinds of supports from Children's Aid and from supports for adoption, if we could have managed without that, and maybe we could have. Of course, it's easy in hindsight because we know more now than we did then. That was 15 years ago. But she has since had 2 children. One of them is 9 years old now, and her name is Adriana, and that's my granddaughter. And when Victoria had Adriana, the Children's Aid brought her into care, and Victoria asked me to foster Adriana, and we did. And she asked us over and over and over again to adopt Adriana, and so we did. And that was really hard because Victoria wanted us to adopt Adriana, but also she's really angry that we have her and that she doesn't have her. But she can't have her because of her brain injury. So she can not take care of herself, let alone take care of a baby. And she has a lot of trouble with self-regulation and a lot of trouble with anger, so it wouldn't be safe. And now she's had another baby. He's 18 months old, little baby Owen, and he is in a wonderful home where they are going to be going for custodial care for him because Victoria, again, she struggles with homelessness, she struggles with addiction, and she has a lot of troubles. But she wants her kids more than anything else. Like, it's her strongest desire to have them and to parent them, and so it is heartbreaking to watch her lose her kids. But she gets to stay connected with them. One of the things that happened with Victoria is that when we adopted her, so 26 years ago, they didn't really know about that open adoption was really important. So Victoria's whole life, her whole growing up life, there was a part of her that would not let herself connect with us. She told me later when Adriana was born that she felt like she was being disloyal to her birth mom. And I wonder if she'd had connection with her birth mom, and if her birth mom had been able to, which she might not have been, if her birth mom had been able to give her permission to love us and be loved by us, that if her life would have been different. So, but also, I feel like a whole part of her life, she wondered about her mom, wondered about who her mom was. And seeing that emptiness, that it was like almost like a hole she had inside of her that was always searching for and wondering about her mother. So from experiencing that, I strongly 100% believe that open adoption is really, really important, and that trying to build some kind of connection, and it might just be telephone calls or something, but some kind of connection where kids are connected to their birth family is the most healthy in most cases. And when we adopted our next kids, we do that. And then I will talk about that later. But also with Adriana, I work really hard at keeping Adriana connected to her birth mom. even when everyone else in my family thinks it's not a good plan, because Victoria can be violent. But we're just making sure we put a lot of things in place to keep Adriana safe, but still keeping her connected. Because I feel like if I don't, it will be a searching and a wondering that Adriana will have her whole life, as opposed to a knowing. Like knowing and understanding that her mother loved her, desired her, wanted her, wants her. Also knowing that she can't look after her and why she couldn't look after her. It won't be a searching for her. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah, it's I'm reading a book right now called The Primal Wound, and
Yeah.
that talks about adoption and the connection between the birth mother and the fetus. And I never really thought about it at the time when I put my son up for adoption, because nothing was talked about back then in
No.
1970, right? Nobody knew that. And I feel like when I was pregnant, because I'd already decided to put my child up for adoption, that I didn't really connect with the child. Like I
Right.
wasn't kind of talking to the baby, asking him or her, because I didn't know at the time, just talking to them and saying, hey, I hope you have a good future, blah, blah. It just never, I think I just cut myself off at that
Totally
point,
makes sense.
because I knew I wouldn't be raising the child, but I never realized that there's always that connection.
Yeah. Until you
and
met him.
and the child always has this feeling of abandonment. So that's why you need the open adoption, right? So that they don't have that feeling. This happened in Winnipeg, and then I moved to Toronto. So I really don't know how open adoption would have affected me my entire life. I probably wouldn't have moved from Winnipeg if it had been an open adoption.
Yeah.
But,
And it might have changed everything, but it is part of the process of figuring this stuff out. Like no one knew.
right.
So even like you say, that open adoption it helps with that wound. But like Adriana, like people think babies don't know, but I was with Adriana for her first week with her mom. Then she was taken into foster care for 1 week, and then she came to me. So for 1 week she was with strangers. Well, she grieved for 6 weeks. She grieved for her mother. Like it was also probably going through some withdrawal, but she grieved. She was so sad. I could just feel her sadness. I knew she was sad. She was so sad. But I just kept walking with her and cuddling her and holding her and working on making sure that her and I were really attached.
So the fetal alcohol syndrome that Victoria is diagnosed with, is that genetic? Does that pass down to Adriana?
I don't think the alcohol part passes down, but the trauma. And both of Adriana's parents have fetal alcohol syndrome. And then there is a chance that Victoria drank. She did drink for sure on one weekend when she was pregnant. She fell off the wagon. She worked really hard at not drinking. She also smoked marijuana all through the pregnancy, and there is not enough evidence yet. There's not enough research on how that affects babies' brains, but it is likely to come up that it will affect babies' brains the same or very similar. Trauma also affects babies' brains very similarly to fetal alcohol syndrome. It causes holes in the brain. So, and then they've proven now through everything that happened in the World War II with Auschwitz, they have proven, and they've also done it with animals, but that trauma passes down for sure to 2 to 3 generations. So trauma that happened. So sometimes what we see in family characteristics. So Adriana is very similar to her mother. She's like a kinder, happier, more empathetic version of her mom. So still has some of the same struggles as her mom. And so when you see families having intergenerational characteristics that you think is just their personalities, some of it might be just trauma.
Interesting.
It's so interesting.
Wow. Well, you've given us a lot here to think about and to talk about. What would you recommend? What would advice would you give to people that are looking at adopting a special needs child?
Well, I guess first of all, you got to know before you even start the whole hard process of taking the course. There's a big course through the Children's Aid, and then doing the home study and all that, is that the courts and the Children's Aid are leaning away from adoption right now. They're putting children into custodial care with people who have really, sometimes it's a really good connection, like a family friend or a family member, but sometimes there's almost no connection. But if they find someone who will take that child who has even a thread of a connection, even though there's no relation, that's what they did. That's what they've done with my son, with my grandson. They have put him with someone who has no actual relation and the minimal threat of a connection. But they said they would be willing to have him in custodial care. So because money is always an issue for Children's Aid, they jump at that opportunity. So the best way, if you want to adopt someone, is to search in your community of friends and family and teachers and people you know who know other friends, and tell everyone you know. Because if they find someone who's willing to do that, then you're more likely to be able to get someone in your home, but you may not get them as adoption. You may get them as custodial. So that is what's going to happen probably with my grandson. He's going to be in custodial care his whole life. My big concern about that is that with open adoption, if you do open adoption and it's written in, you have the birth parent has the same rights to see the child has the rights to see their birth family, but the child is still permanently adopted, where the parents have the rights and responsibilities of being a full parent. When someone's a custodial parent, what happens when that child is a teenager? Because, we all know what teenagers are like. And then you have a teenager who's gone through adoption and has gone through trauma, and maybe it's going to show more behaviors than the average teenager. And then are they going to be more likely to give them up? I don't know. I guess that's the way the pendulum swings. So with what happened with our Indigenous communities of settlers scooping kids and taking kids, the 60s scoop, the residential schools, the knowledge about generational trauma, they're leaning more and more away from not taking children from birth families permanently. But sometimes kids cannot live with their birth family. So we have to figure out a better way. But with the way it's going right now is custodial care, so they can be in the care of someone for the rest of their life, but not have any of the rights or responsibilities of an adoptive parent.
That's hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
There is a group, of course, that wants to abolish adoption because they feel that adoption is a legalized form of human trafficking. But there are so many needs, so many children with needs that they need to be loved and they need to be cared for. And I don't think custodial parent actually does that.
I worry that it doesn't have the same commitment and responsibility when things are tough, because we're taking on these kids. And I guess that's the biggest thing. Love is the biggest thing that I could give my kids, the biggest thing. But I can't ever fix the damage that was done by someone else. Can't ever fix that. And that is a really hard thing to learn. And even knowing everything I knew before we adopted Victoria, because I didn't really know it. You don't know it till you experience it. So parenting someone else's child is different, because even though, and I don't know because I don't have any birth children, but I'm just seeing through family and friends, it feels like sometimes it feels like more like a marriage, but sometimes you're married to someone who's not going to do any of the work. Like when they're going through their hard times, they're not doing any work to be in a relationship with you. It's all on you.
Right.
And that is tough. And if you don't have the right supports, the right friends, the right people around, it can be really hard, because family doesn't understand. And a lot of friends don't understand. So my social circle has become smaller when my kids are involved. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I think that happens though for even families, couples when they have their first child, their social circle becomes smaller because if their friends don't have children, then they're
Exactly.
not the same, right?
Exactly. Or anybody who has a special needs child, because if their special needs child is a behavioral child, that can be really hard for other people to understand. And so I would say that it's not just adoptive families that are like that, it's also kids with special needs, and because there's so many kids now today who have ADHD and other things, right?
Right. And I look back at my kids. They had some trauma in their lives when their dad had a bad accident, and then they started misbehaving, and that cut down our friendships as well. People didn't want to
Right.
be around because of our children. So even though it wasn't the same thing, it still narrows your social circle.
And you can imagine how people can you see glimpses of that.
Yeah.
So, and that's something that sometimes I think adoptive parents aren't ready for. Also, it's sometimes hard. You know how you said that when you knew that you were going to put your baby up for adoption, you knew you're going to put your son up for adoption, you didn't let yourself attach to him?
Yes.
So when we adopted our kids, so every time we did, there's a probation period. So for Victoria, it was a long one, like over a year. But my mom came and did the surface things. But until they were permanently adopted, she did not let herself completely attach. And she was not aware of it.
Yeah. I can be honest here. I have not let myself completely attach to, say, my daughter's husband and my son's wife, because you hold back. You learn to hold back, and no matter what you go through, you're always holding back something.
Right. Because it's
And that
hard to be vulnerable.
back in 1970 when I built these blocks, concrete blocks around my heart.
Yes.
And it's hard to let go and be open.
It is. It's hard to be vulnerable.
So these things carry forward no matter what you're thinking.
Yes.
What happens in your life, you carry some baggage with you that you can't
Exactly.
let go, that's hard to let go of.
Yes, it's something that we're all just working on, right? Always just working on.
Always working on ourselves. That's what we have to do, always work on ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle, thank you very much. I really appreciate all the information. You've given me a lot of information about fetal alcohol syndrome and about how it affects raising children and how you've been affected by that. I'm so happy that you were able to adopt your granddaughter
Me too.
and not become a custodial parent.
Me too.
That you have the rights to be able to look after her and take care of her and love her the way you want to. And that makes a huge difference.
Yes, I wonder how attachment, especially from extended family, will be different because Owen is not adopted by them. He's their custodial parent. He'll always be like not 100% included. I don't know. I'm not, like, their family's lovely. I'm not saying it's on purpose, but that's what I think that the error and the problem with custodial parenting as opposed to adoption.
I think there'd always be something held back.
Yeah. And this is what
I guess we'll find out as time goes on, right?
We'll always have to find out. Luckily, the benefit of it, and you always try to find the silver lining, is that because we saw him every single weekend when he was in foster care, he came to us. Adriana is so attached to him. She adores him. He adores her. And so the Children's Aid says they're committed to him staying in relationship with us. So he comes to us every other weekend, and we're very connected. So even if something breaks down in where he is, he always has a connection with his sister and with us, and through us, a connection to his mother, and the story of how much his mother adored him, loved him, wanted him, and desired so strongly to be his parent.
Do you think Victoria will ever be able to look after her children?
No, because it's a brain injury that it is a brain. It's like she struggles with addiction and homelessness, and those are things that maybe she'll be able to work on and help, and she's been trying. But the brain injury part is something that, unless she has a partner who she could stay with, who is going to be able to balance those things out, it would never be safe.
Okay.
And that's the sad part, right?
That's the sad part.
That
But
is, and
you
it is
both
heartbreaking to
on a
watch.
regular basis, and Adriana and Owen get to see her on a regular basis?
Owen is going to get to see her fairly regularly through supervised visits. They're going for custodial care right now, and they're doing a once a week visit. I don't know if Victoria will manage to get to those once a week visits. She has a lot of trouble with time management. Adriana talks on the phone with her approximately once a week, but we have to figure out a way to do visits where Adriana is safe, because Victoria can get very angry at me. So she loves me, needs me, calls me whenever she needs anything, which is all the time, and I am her support, but she's also very angry at me because I have Adriana. So it's a catch-22, because she has this deep anger that she doesn't have Adriana and that I do.
That you do.
Yeah.
And I remember you said to me that you hope when you get to heaven that she forgives you, right?
I hope when I get to heaven, that's when she'll be able to say, "You did the right thing, Mom," because she can't do it now.
Perfect. Okay, thank you again, Michelle. Appreciate your time. Loved your story. I'm sure the story that you told is going to affect a lot of people and give people more insight into raising child with special needs. I appreciate your time, and I really look forward to a second edition when we're going to talk about your 2 children that you have with an open adoption.
Thanks, Janet.
Okay.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning in to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories, where every tree has roots, every life has branches, and every adoption has a story.